to bring to your attention that the session would be broadcast live on CNBC Africa, and therefore just highlight some TV protocol that we would kindly ask you to follow. You would have seen a whole host of cameras in the room. If for any reason you do need to leave the room during the proceedings, could I just ask that you do so being mindful of the cameras and duck and dive should you need to do so. I would also ask that at this point we turn our phones on silent. We would definitely like you to use and engage your phones throughout the session, but just make sure that it is done silently. There will be an opportunity for you to engage. You're not just mere spectators at today's session, and we certainly do look forward to your engagement. Any comments that you may have on the information that is shared regarding the budget and the revenue strategy, as well as questions that you may have. Due to the slightly delayed start, we would ask that you keep any questions or comments that you have brief, just to allow for as many of you to ask questions and have your answers given to you. With that said, I do hope that you have a wonderful time, and we'll be beginning shortly. Thank you. A heartfelt good morning from Pretoria, the capital city of South Africa. My name is Fifi Peters, and I'd like to welcome you to the CNBC Africa special broadcast of the post-budget breakfast of the Gauteng province, the economic hub here in South Africa. Over the course of this morning, we will be grilling the fiscal position of the Gauteng province over the medium term as was presented in its recently tabled budget. We will then move over to simmer the plans that the province does have to enhance its revenue collection, to make good on the promises that it has made to the citizenry of this province. And of course, this amid a challenging position in which its contribution from national government has been on the decline as a result of the focus of the national government to fight the COVID-19 pandemic and now address the economic recovery. We will hopefully also be sauteing the strengths and the weaknesses of the current plan, and hopefully get recommendations and insights from yourselves, as well as the ladies and gentlemen joining us in this room, as to how it can be improved. And then after that, hopefully towards the end, have a dish that is appetizing enough to get all the relevant stakeholders to partake and bite into and partner with the Gauteng province in making the plan a reality, and a successful one at that. You would notice that the cooking methods that I did make reference to make use of minimal fat, if any of you are chefs. And the reason for that is because this plan will have to be lean and mean if it is to truly be successful. As I said, I do engage and I look forward to your engagement throughout the session. For the audience that is joining us here at the University of Pretoria, I do welcome your comments, and you can do so towards the end of the program, where we will be opening up the floor for questions and answers, as well as comments from you. For the audience that is tuned in on CNBC Africa Live, do follow the conversation with us virtually, and you can also engage with us on social media using the relevant handles. And with that said, I would like to welcome the very first speaker for this morning. That is Professor Karen Barak, the Deputy Dean of the Faculty of Economic and Management Sciences, and she will give the official welcome address. Could I ask my audience members here who are joining us virtually to help us welcome her with a warm applause.
The member of the Executive Council responsible for finance, the Honourable Nomantu Nkomo-Ralehoko, MECs in and heads of selected departments and municipalities, private sector and other Chapter 9 institution representatives, colleagues of research houses and institutes, colleagues in the academia, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is my privilege to welcome you to today's Gauteng Province post-budget breakfast, which certainly represents a special occasion because its revenue enhancement strategy is introduced. First of all, I would like to warmly welcome you to the University of Pretoria's Future Africa campus, a place where Africa's leading scholars and scientists regularly meet to address challenges of society. I also extend this welcome on behalf of the University of Pretoria, in particular the Faculty of the Economic and Management Sciences and its Dean, Professor Margaret Chitika Mabugu, who is currently on a foreign visit with Professor Kupe, our Vice-Chancellor and Principal. However, we are privileged to have in our midst a member of the university's executive team. In particular, Mr. Zandile Mitiyana, who is the Chief Operating Officer of the University of Pretoria. The faculty is indeed honoured to be involved in today's event, as it is a priority for us to partner in order to contribute to society's challenges with our research as well as our knowledge. It is not the first time that we have collaborated with the Gauteng provincial government, as we have a long history of collaboration on research, joint research projects, as well as capacity development initiatives. We believe in and we look forward to opportunities such as today that have the potential to lead to further research and other community development collaborations. Future Africa advocates collaboration and innovative thinking. It provides a tranquil setting for today's event. And I hope that this inspires the esteemed guests to think together and to conceptualize feasible as well as sustainable plans to make the vision of growing Gauteng together 2030 a reality. COVID over the past 2 years have learnt us many lessons. In particular, we know that financial and other resources are extremely limited, and it will require innovative and creative thinking from our leaders to make responsible and prudent decisions. Today, we get a look at how the Gauteng provincial government will use its revenue enhancement strategy for economic, and infrastructure development by establishing new revenue streams and maximising the existing ones. Knowledge sharing is the first step, and it's a very important step. But further, it requires deliberation, action, and hard work. And therefore, I leave you with the wise words of Winnie the Pooh, maybe the wisest cartoon character, when he said, "So perhaps the best thing is to stop writing introductions and get on with the book." So on this high note, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to introduce our next speaker, Ms. Mnyane, to share some opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Professor Barak. Good morning, MEC. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and all protocol observed. I would like to take all of us through some kind of opening remarks. The opening remarks will be a summary of the budget that was tabled by the MEC in the previous month that we are in. This is the outline of our presentation, which we're looking at our provincial receipts, allocations that we've made to the departments. And I think, as we all know, that we have a sector that we need to look after, which is the social services, and where the new money has been allocated, which priorities have we prioritized, and also looking at the infrastructure budget, and also looking at the outflow in the MTF as far as our provincial, especially provincial revenue estimates are concerned. This budget is premised on the following, which is the dealing with the issue of COVID-19 pandemic. It will also look at the recalibrating our social policy, as we know that the impact of COVID has actually rendered a lot of the citizens of the country and Gauteng finding themselves in very dire situations. And we also look at the issue of ensuring that there is governance, proper governance in the province. Whilst we are implementing this budget, we are all aware that protocols need to be involved, and we protect the provincial purse. This is the budget for the province. We received national transfers in the form of equitable shares to the value of 120 billion and conditional grants to the value of 26.5 billion. And also, as a province, we will be generating our own revenue in the form of the various, your gambling boards, your liquor boards, and fees from the various departments, one of them being the motor vehicle licenses, to the value of about 7.25 billion. After taking off the direct charges, which takes care of our legislation, and the legislature is our body, we will be left with 153.7 billion. Of this 153.7.1 billion, we've allocated 152.98 billion to our departments. The biggest chunk going to our Department of Education, followed by the Department of Health, and then our Department of Roads and Transport, Human Settlements and Social Services, and 13% of that will be shared amongst the various departments. The total that is servicing our social services is 82% of the budget, to the value of 124.69 billion. What are the key priorities or interventions that we funded as a province? We all know that as a country, we have a scourge which is called the fourth scourge, after your HIV and AIDS, your poverty, your COVID-19, inequality. We have what we call the gender-based violence. And what we have decided to do is to make a concerted effort in actually trying to deal with this scourge, to the value of about 225 million. food insecurity, dignity packs, and school uniforms, which are all linked to the issue of poverty and inequality, is also a priority that we've targeted. TSEPO 1 million, dealing with the issue of the unemployment, specifically of the youth in our province, to the value of 144 million. Early childhood development, as indicated, that we are recalibrating our social policy, targeting specifically health and education. So we're putting an amount to the value of 2 billion to actually make sure that, especially in public schools, that early childhood development is properly capacitated and also implemented. As part of reigniting the economy, there is a Tshwane SEZ, as most of us would probably know, that we've received a huge partnership from Ford, and we are actually putting some money in there to make sure that the bulk infrastructure is in place so that those factories can be properly supported and they create the jobs and ignite our economy. And lastly, ICT. We all know fourth industrial revolution is the thing, and we are putting an amount of 2.7 billion to make sure that throughout the country there is proper ICT. Their children at school, they start learning about this at an early stage, but also including automation, some of our services. This is the new money, as we've spoken about. This is to the tune of about 8 billion in total. The chunk of it going to the Department of Education, Department of Health getting about 1.5 billion of that, Department of Economic Development, as we can see on the chart. And then we have the budget for infrastructure spend, which is sitting at about 12.25 billion. And the bigger chunk of that is going to the Department of Human Settlements, which is at 44% of the budget, followed by the Health Department. As we all know that there is a lot of work that we still need to do as far as our health infrastructure is concerned, followed by our roads and transport. This, as already spoken to, including the Tshwane SEZ through the Department of Economic Development. This is the budget, as I've already spoken to. What we've also done, we've gone down to the point of ensuring that all the sectors or corridors, as we name them in Gauteng, are covered in their respective proportion, because the outskirts of the province, which we would call our rural areas, even though they're not, they were sometimes left behind. So we made sure that when we do our allocation, we're very specific. So as far as the health, that is the background, and also Central Corridor, we have 857 million, Eastern Corridor, 291 million, the Northern Corridor, 611, and the Southern, 109, and the Western Corridors, 346 million. The same as the Department of Education, where it is receiving 1.7 billion of that infrastructure budget, and it is spread accordingly on the various corridors within the province. And then for the Department of Roads and Transport, they will be receiving 2 billion rands of that infrastructure budget, and also highlighted in the various corridors across the province. And the Department of Human Settlements would get the biggest chunk of all this budget. They're receiving 5.95 billion, and spread accordingly, as well as indicated across the various corridors. And lastly, this is our slide that shows the revenue estimates, the provincial revenue estimates that we are projecting as a province over the MTF. So in 2022-23, we're looking at a figure of close to about 7.2 billion, growing to 7.56 billion, and 7.9, almost 8 billion in the outer year of the 24-25. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the highlights of the budget that was presented by our Honorable MEC. And on that note, I would like to invite our MEC, Ms. Nkomo-Ralehoko, to come and talk to the details of this revenue enhancement revenue enhancement strategy that informs the revenue estimates that I've just spoken to. Please, can you join me in welcoming her by giving her a warm round of applause. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chuti Nyani. Let me greet Program Director, Ms. Fifi Peters. Let me greet our Dean, Deputy Dean of the Faculty of Economic and Management Sciences, Professor Karen Barak, the Chief Operations Officer of the University, Mr. Sandile Mtiani, Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee and members of the Portfolio Committee led by Mr. Joe Mbisi, members of the Mayoral Committee for Finance in the City of Tshwane, Councillor Peter Sutton, because you are welcoming us today, so we really appreciate it. But there are other MMCs from the other corridors, which we call them regions of Gauteng. Member of the Mayoral Committee with heads of departments, my apologies rather, of other senior government departments who have invited HODs, especially in the economic cluster in the Gauteng province, that have joined us today. Members of the academia, CEOs of public institutions, business leaders, ladies and gentlemen. Let me start by expressing our deepest appreciation to the University of Pretoria for partnering with us to host the post-budget breakfast and the launch of our own revenue enhancement strategy. And I'm happy that Member Randall is here today because she has been bashing me about this. You cannot have money, but you don't have other means of bringing money, MEC, to the province. And I think I've done exactly like that. Thank you, Member Randall, for always sitting on my neck to do the right thing. I really appreciate those engagements. I'm particularly pleased, again, let me start by expressing again our deepest appreciation to the University of Pretoria for partnering with us to host the post-budget breakfast and the launch of our own revenue. I'm particularly pleased that you decided that we must convene at this venue that is called the Future Africa Campus. From your website, you describe this facility as a place, and I quote, where Africa's leading scientists and scholars from across the world and from a broad range of disciplines will come together to leverage the benefits of transdisciplinary research to address the grand challenges that face Africa and the world. Close quote. Furthermore, you state that, I will open quote, the Future Africa Initiative will foster a new generation of science leaders and provide a link for them to do research networks across the continent and the world. This platform will connect scientists from different fields to meet, work together and exchange ideas to develop the new research projects that are specifically aimed at addressing the challenges that hamper transformation towards a prosperous, equitable and sustainable future for Africa, close quote. Program Director, given the strength of this and the sophistication of our economy, Gauteng is positioned strategically to make a significant contribution in supporting Africa's new industrial revolution and in helping to drive the Africa Rising narrative. Gauteng is the gateway to the African continent. We therefore thank you, the University of Pretoria, for developing a facility such as the Future Africa Campus. This is a major investment into the future. This of Gauteng and South Africa and the African continent, which contributes directly towards the realization of Africa Rising narrative. As the Gauteng Provincial Government, we place a high premium on the transformative partnership with all sectors of society in our country and beyond. We know that this partnership will help us to deal with some of our pressing challenges, including youth unemployment, women, not forgetting them, and a limited access to skills development and entrepreneurial opportunities. We are therefore very keen to partner with institutions of higher learning because we strongly believe that Innovation, technology, research, and development will help us to identify and unlock the true potential of our economy. Ladies and gentlemen, the global economy is gradually recovering from the effects of the pandemic. However, the pace of recovery is being hindered by the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, which has already led to a high oil commodity and food prices. The International Monetary Fund forecasts global economic growth to moderate to 4.4% in 2022, from 5.9% in 2021. The South African economy continued its recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic in 2021, with the gross domestic product expanding by 4.9%. Economic growth is expected to increase to 2.0% in 2022 and is forecast to be in 1.9% in both 2023 and 2024. The latest estimates show that Gauteng economy grew by 1.4% quarter-on-quarter in the fourth quarter of 2021, taking the annual growth rate to 2021 to 5.1%. Even though the provincial economy ended 2022 on a high note, the pace of the recovery has been too slow to translate into sustainable job creation. Stats South Africa's data show that only 76,000 jobs were created in Gauteng in the fourth quarter of 2021. This was not enough to make a significant dent in the unemployment rate, which reached a high number of 36.6% over the same period. Furthermore, the burden of unemployment is mostly borne by the youth of the province. The official unemployment rate for the 5 to 24 years age group was estimated at 70.1% in the fourth quarter, and even worse according to the expanded definition. IHS Markit expects economic growth in Gauteng to increase to 2.2% in 2022, before moderating to 2.1% in 2023. Significant risks to the outlook include rising inflation and continued disruption to power supply. Therefore, sustainable economic recovery and the effective implementation of the revenue enhancement strategy are necessary for improved revenue collection to fund provincial priorities. Ladies and gentlemen, when I presented the Gauteng budget on the 9th of March 2022, I outlined how the provincial government will spend more than 400,000 billion over the next 3 years to fund our priorities, in particular facilitating economic growth, job creation for youth, and expanding access to quality basic services in the public and in line with the growing Gauteng Together Plan Vision 2030. In the same speech, I emphasized that in the environment characterized by fiscal constraints due to, amongst other things, the impact of COVID-19 pandemic and negative implications of the July 2021 unrest of the economy, these resources will be insufficient to address the challenges that are faced by our province. In response to the prevailing resource constraint, the realization that this situation is likely to last over the short term to medium term, Gauteng Provincial Treasury has developed the revenue enhancement strategy. This is the strategy that is anchored around 2 pillars and constitutes of 16 identified revenue generation projects. Pillar 1 entails maximizing current revenue sources, which are motor vehicle licenses, casino and horse racing fees, patient fees, and interest on short-term investment surplus. Pillar 2 focuses on new sources of revenue to be explored to increase the baseline, with a focus on closing loopholes and modernization towards maximum revenue collection. ICT-enabled public service delivery offers an opportunity to improve efficiency and access to public service, develops transparency and accountability of governments through the use of technology to improve efficiency and revenue collection. We will introduce the following initiatives. The first one will be automation of gambling operations. The second one is cashless solutions at nature reserves. The third one will be online renewal of motor vehicle licenses. The fourth one is automating visitors solutions at health facilities. And the fifth one is liquor license automation. The quick wins for infrastructure component as stated in the revenue strategy include the following initiatives: an upgrade of regional centers into vehicle impound facilities, visitors parking at health facilities, other new revenue potential projects that are identified in the revenue strategy, Those will include the Gauteng broadband network commercialization, whereby revenue could be generated through the third-party offtake for spare capacity generated through Gauteng broadband infrastructure rollout. And next week, we will be meeting with the Premier, with all the CEOs of those companies like your MTN, Telkom, and others that are responsible for ICT in the province, to assist us to come up with the immediate initiatives that will deal with the commercialization of GBN. E-waste is one of those that we have just launched as a province, and I'm sure you know, all of you here, that that's the first project that we have as Gauteng provincial government, including national government in the country, because it's only private companies that are doing e-waste in the province. And there's a part that I've just learned about it, which is called urban mining, that you find in your gadgets when you are sitting at home, that you are sitting with gold, and all along we were not aware. But it's going to help us now, because we will do urban mining through these gadgets. And the university must help us so that we speed up that process of making sure that these gadgets bring back this mining, this gold that is there in those gadgets that we're having. And we were not aware all along that when the criminals snatch them, they are not aware that they are snatching gold from our hands. As a province, we recognized that enhanced revenue collection lies less in introducing new taxes within our mandate, in accordance with the prescribed processes, but rather improving the efficiency of collection from the traditional sources. Revenue performance for the first 2 years of the current administration was recorded as follows. For 2019-20, it was 7 billion and that was collected by us, and I think we're grateful with that, although we wanted 8 billion as a province. Then what we have done now, we have moved again, we collected at least 2020, 2021 again, and again we are not happy about the 6.5 billion that we managed to collect, and HOD is coming up with plans of ensuring that we get more money from those specific departments that are helping us to collect some of the money. For 21-22 fiscal year, it was 6.98 billion, which we are projecting to collect, and I know HOD, I'm going to move more than that 6.98, because we've set ourselves time frames when we want this money to come to the coffers of the province. We strongly believe growing our own revenue for Gauteng will assist us to protect funding for key priorities in our province, including facilitating economic growth to create jobs, public education, health and social welfare, even in these difficult times of our province. Ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, I want to indicate that this launch of the revenue strategy in the context of the 2022 Gauteng budget provides a platform to share practical inputs for consideration towards maximizing revenue collection, to resource provincial priorities within a challenging environment of slow and uneven recovery for the impact of COVID-19 pandemic. We want to stretch the rent to ensure that the impact of the provincial budget positively touches each household in the province. By doing so, we will be continuing to implant hope in our people and make it possible for them to believe that their lives will be better than today and tomorrow. I look forward to hearing your insightful inputs today and working with all of you in this room as our key stakeholders to find solutions to the challenges faced by our country and our province. I want to thank you, Program Director, and once again, thank you to the university for making sure that we are here. We will continue partnering with yourselves. We are working with other universities already, University of Vets, University of UJ, and we're stretching again, working with the TVET colleges. But with your guidance, especially in the area of research and ensuring that we bring better ideas in changing the lives of the people of the province. I always say to my colleagues, you are our #1 critics, but you are our #1 fans again. Listening to you, we will definitely do the right thing in the province, in servicing the citizens of the country. Thank you very much once again.
All right, perfect. So now the time to assess all the practical inputs as presented by the MEC as well as the government at large in trying to increase the the revenue, the income coming into the province amidst the challenges that we're still facing. And so we're moving on to the panel discussion, in which we will have inputs from various stakeholders from the private sector as well as from the university, as they review the plan of the Gauteng province to increase its own revenue collection, look at what is working and what is practical about that plan, and also assess the areas of improvement. So at this stage, I would like to welcome the panelists to join me on stage to take this part of the program forward, beginning with Professor Gerda van Dijk. And she is the director of Director of the School of Public Management Administration. Mr. Isaiah Mhlanga. He's the senior economist at Alex Forbes. You guys rebranded, right? It's no longer Alexander Forbes, Alex Forbes, right. We also have Professor Heinrich Bollmann, who is the assistant professor in the Department of Economics. And last but not least, Mr. Andre Snyders, the industry analyst at Standard Bank. It was quite refreshing to see a lot of you with your pamphlets open, just reviewing the numbers and reviewing the documents. So I'm certainly looking forward to the insights that you have based on what was presented so far, and also based on the reading that you have been doing this morning. But with that said, ladies and gentlemen, I would perhaps like to begin with an economic view, if I can begin with you, of the Gauteng budget. Let's start there. I recall speaking to you when the finance minister delivered the national budget, and you had a fairly optimistic view of the numbers that were tabled. I'd like your rating of the Gauteng budget as was presented earlier today.
Thank you very much for having me today. I think if we just look at the Gauteng province, it operates in a global environment, it operates in the broader country. So the developments that take place globally and nationally do have an impact on what happens in Gauteng. And we know very well that we have an interest rate rising cycle globally, but also our central bank locally is increasing interest rates. That increases the costs for consumers in the province, but also in the country. Where food price inflation that the MEC alluded to, issues that are happening in Ukraine, raising wheat prices, but also increasing petrol prices. And as of this Wednesday, we are going to get another petrol price increase, despite the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy and National Treasury trying to cushion consumers by reducing, by R1.50. Still, petrol price continue to increase, which means that is a cost to consumers, which means they are going to be quite constrained. Food price, electricity price, fuel price, so all these constraints eat into their budget, which means for us to see their willingness to pay for services which the province provide, they have to see value for money from what the province provides in terms of services, which is going to be quite crucial as far as the province is concerned. So the global environment is not that supportive as far as the cost of living is concerned. Nationally, the growth is going to be somewhere between 2 and 2.5%. Even that comes with downside risks, which means there are also downside risks to revenue potential that the country is going to get, but also the province is going to get from some of the transfers that are going to be done. But I think the main point that I would want to drive is the consumer is under stress, unemployment has been rising, multi-decades high, and that is going to mean that from an income point of view, there are constraints. If you look at wage growth as well, it is not growing as high as it should be, which means there is going to be quite a significant constraint as far as the ability of consumers in the province are going to have in terms of paying for those services which provide sources of revenue for the province. So it's really not an overly optimistic view that we are painting, because some of the risks that we did not identify earlier on, that were not on the radar, have meant that a lot of costs are now onto the consumer, which is going to be quite restrictive as far as the ability to pay for some of the services concerned. So that is going to be quite a big challenge for the province.
Sure. And then to the point that you made, amidst this challenge and amidst or trying to increase the willingness of consumers to pay for the services delivered by the province, they need to see value for money. But of course, it's not just the consumers that are battling these tough times, as it were. You read the statements of many businesses, and they're equally as worried about inflation, and their bottom line is equally being eaten by rising prices and cost pressures. And it's these businesses that operate within the province as well, so to be mindful of them. And therefore, Prof. Gada, I'd like to get your view as an expert in public management of what the province is trying to do in its strategy to increase its own revenue collection. What do you make of it and the manner in which they're trying to achieve it?
Thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity to be part of this panel. As you said, my expertise lies in public administration, and for me, when I read the strategy itself, although some of the objectives, the pillars, are creative, they are innovative in how they would like to source revenue. For me, what is most important is that the system that underpins this particular strategy, that this system needs to function in an integrated manner. And that was something that I did not see coming through clearly in the strategy itself. It is an area that I think the School of Public Management Administration at the university, where we can definitely assist, because systems thinking is what is needed to drive any kind of strategy. If the state, you spoke about the willingness of the citizens to pay for their services to increase and to contribute to this revenue strategy, but at the basis of it also you have a state agency, you've got a provincial government that has to be an enabling employer. It has to be an employer that offers their employees also the opportunity for that collaboration, creativity, innovation, connection to take place. So yes, the strategy is output focused, and it has the right priorities that have been identified, but if the employer itself does not, first of all, think about how to integrate their systems and not operate in silos and not operate each of these outputs that it would like to achieve as separate kinds of projects, but as a single integrated project, and then develop the necessary skills within its employees to support this integrated system, the strategy itself may yield outputs that are beneficial to the province, but as an employer, the province may not be able to retain all the skills that it invests in developing. So that is an area where we could definitely partner and support the university in integrating and in inculcating a systems thinking into its administrative systems.
Funny, that's also one of the things that I thought about when I was reading some of the plans. Just whether there was the adequate capacity within the province and the adequate skills. And I want to put the answer to you as to, is there not an opportunity then for as you did mention, that the university is willing to partner, particularly with the plan and the most important parts of systems integration, but is there not an opportunity for perhaps for the university to also partner with skills provision and capacitating the department?
Definitely, and this faculty is uniquely positioned to bring together a group of people from all different kinds of disciplines to be able to support the implementation of this particular strategy. Just from a public administration perspective, we're kind of the experts on policy implementation. So what is needed from a systems perspective to implement, but our economics department can assist in how to capitalize on the strategy. We can have different departments that support. But can I just make one comment here? I think central to the skills development is the issue of leadership. and this is something that both was highlighted in the budget as well as in the strategy. And the SPMA also has had very good results with tailored leadership programs that we've worked very closely with our partners in turning around the organizational culture to become supportive and to become more collaborative and connect more with its employees. And this is also where we would be able, I think, make a contribution specifically to the Gauteng provincial government. But the issue of leadership, if the Gauteng provincial government does not provide the adequate leadership, and they also state in their strategy that it is the responsibility of every leader, of every official, of every line manager to really push the implementation of the strategy. But if there isn't a collective vision, a direction that they all follow, that all those that work within the Gauteng provincial government buy into, it becomes an add-on. And,
Okay, points taken. Thanks so much for sharing. Andre, just one of the areas, it's a two-pronged strategy, right? So it's looking at maximizing revenue from the existing pool and creating a bigger pool, as it were, to increase and collect more revenue from that pool. So in the existing part, you have got the interest earned, which was made reference to a little earlier. And I do understand that Standard Bank is a partner with the province. You're its banker. So talk to us about, just broadly, the revenue enhancement strategy, but also the support that could be provided in enhancing or beefing up the revenue coming from interest earned, as it were.
Sure, thanks very much. The document, I loved reading the documents. We got 648 pages of the budget. And I love reading numbers. It was great. Then we got 26 pages of the own revenue strategy as well, which I also enjoyed. And the key part of that is the two pillars, Pillar 1 and Pillar 2. Pillar 1, existing revenue, and Pillar 2, new ideas. Right. And this is all about the 7 or 8 billion that we're talking about. Right. So just to put that in context, because there are a lot of numbers out here today. When national government auctioned off the spectrum the other day, and the major telecoms players were involved, that brought in 14 billion rand, right, from the private sector. Okay. What we're looking at here, this strategy is to go from 7 to 8 billion, or 8 to 9, something like. So we're talking about growth of about 1 to 2 billion rand. The other day, the South African Revenue Service, another part of government, announced that businesses and families in South Africa had paid 200 billion rands more tax than they had planned for. Right. So that would be the whole of the Gauteng provincial government's budget plus another 50 billion. Okay. So that's extra tax that the government has got in. Then, of course, we're in the middle of a commodities boom, and miners are working with Transnet to export more commodities, which brings in more revenue, more jobs. So I think if we look at the scale of things, we can see that moving from 7 to 8 is a good thing for Gauteng. But if we see the bigger picture, then we start thinking about all of us. Right? It's a national economy, and there's a lot that Gauteng can lead on, as Gerda was saying, to really grow a lot more. And if I just take one example, so one of the items in Pillar 2 is about the automation of parking at hospitals. Right? And it gives an example of raising the revenue from 2,000 Rand to 6,000 Rand, okay, at one particular facility. I think it was Charlotte Matleke. So there, it's a small number, but the idea is correct. So the automation is correct. But the automation is going to cost money first to create it, right? So there's always spending that comes first. And we shouldn't really be going from 2,000 to 6,000. We should be spending 2,000, or maybe going from 2,000 to 1,000 and doing the same amount of parking, right? So we actually want to spend less to get more.
Yeah.
And I think that's something we should focus on. The same, opening 9 new bingo halls or allowing 400 new bookmakers isn't really going to move the needle. But the province faces the same as we do, higher water costs, higher power costs. If we can work with Eskom and Transnet and water supplies to lower those costs, fantastic. Then GPG pays less.
Sure.
And I think that's something we can all celebrate.
Sure. All right. So just touching on the points of number one, leadership there, as well as collaboration, echoing some of the sentiments that Professor Gerda did share. I will be opening up the floor for questions. So if you do have any questions, I suppose just raise your hand. A mic will be brought to you. Feel free to stand and introduce yourself and pose the relevant question to the relevant speaker. But coming to you, Prof. Henrich, as Andre touched on, there's quite a lot of the emphasis of the new revenue pool, focusing on digitizing a lot of the old ways of doing things, so bringing in more efficiencies, as it were. And that should be a good thing, right? It's moving in the right direction for IR, ready and efficient, no?
Yeah, absolutely, Fifi. So I want to touch on a couple of points made already to build, I think the point is systems thinking and for the population to see tangible value from their tax revenues, right? So especially in the case of new ideas in terms of taxes as well as building on existing ones, it's very important for compliance, right? Especially when trying to introduce something new, that citizens feel they're getting good value and that these things are well implemented so that the ease of doing it is easy, which of course helps with compliance. And I think that that's certainly something that needs to be emphasized going forward in the implementation of any new idea. I like the billboards idea. I think the idea of a competition, one of the last points mentioned, I think that could perhaps better be integrated in supporting a kind of an adoption of technology in terms of motor vehicle licenses. I think it dwarfs almost any other own revenue stream, the motor vehicle licenses, and we all know in Gauteng that is one of the big kind of sticking points at the moment, and I can speak from first-hand experience there, right? So perhaps get people on the online system, get them to adopt these systems, and instead of just sticking with the old manual ways of doing things, get people online, get them involved, and perhaps channel those kind of competition ideas to get people involved in this and the adoption of technology. But again, it has to be easy, it has to be well integrated, and ultimately people need to see value for our tax revenue.
Sure. Okay.
Can I make
Go ahead.
3 points? I think a lot of what is in the document is revenue enhancement from efficiencies. That you can push up to a certain extent, but you can't increase revenue beyond the efficiency if the pie is not growing. So the focus needs to be more on growing the economy of the province so that we can actually expand beyond what efficiencies can bring. Secondly, there are, sometimes we view the issues of jobs in the formal sense and we don't view informal jobs as jobs. And that makes us lose focus on where can we create those jobs in a very easy manner. If we look in terms of the bylaws that exist at local government level, they're too restrictive. People cannot create livelihoods for themselves. Hence, we have a very high number of people that are dependent on the province for their livelihoods, instead of them being enabled to start their small businesses, to start a way that they can live without being supported by the province. And the third point really is to say, we have been talking about an electricity constraint because Eskom cannot provide. We have load shedding, which is a downside risk to growth. But have we thought about making it compulsory with every house that is built, if it's not, if it doesn't have solar as part of its makeup, the house is not approved as a plan. Immediately, we can then reduce the energy dependence on Eskom because people will be able to generate their own houses from solar. It's free sun. We can then create a whole industry of producing solar panels in the province, which can add jobs. For me, those are some of the things that we can practically do with the support of the province that can help to actually reduce unemployment, reduce the dependence on Eskom and electricity, but make people to be able to start their small businesses by simply reducing the red tape that is, as part of the bylaws that exist, which, by the way, have been made before 1994 and have never been, reviewed in terms of their suitability of the economy that we have today.
Yeah, a great idea, out-the-box thinking idea in terms of the new houses that are being built, perhaps by all human settlement departments incorporating solar, right? Great idea. I was having a conversation yesterday around the journey of making the switch to solar, and the energy expert, according to his numbers, he may be right or wrong, but getting a battery in one's home as well as solar panels in one's home, that could cost around 200,000 rand, right, for a home. That's a lot of money. So my question to you then is, great idea. How can this idea be funded, as well as the plan? I suppose you did mention the cost implications of implementing this, these new strategies. So can I speak to the panel about a feasible funding stream for some of these ideas?
So firstly, very valid point. In terms of energy storage, the technology is still not well developed. But there's nothing that stops people using solar during the day, where you actually don't need to store it directly from the sun to using it to an extent. So that can actually reduce some of the energy needs during the day.
So that takes out 80,000. So without the battery costs 80,000 according to this energy expert, right? And the solar 120 alone. So address that need for me.
And then the province have to think about developing that technology locally. Producing batteries is another industry that we can create jobs on. But as my panelist colleague here mentioned, it takes money to drive efficiency. So initially you have to invest, but the return on that investment that you get over time should be able to pay for the technologies that you get.
Sure.
So we have to invest into these industries first before we can get the returns.
Sure. Or you can ask your banker, Andrew.
Definitely. So one of the big successes is that consumers in South Africa have access to retail credit, and they use it extensively. And that has allowed people to grow businesses. People are buying vehicles to start getting involved in tourism. People are using home loans to start a bed and breakfast. So this is already happening. Mm-hmm. But one thing I'd just like to point out is that we shouldn't focus too much on GPG as a commercial entity. Right? So if GPG is putting billboards on the side of its businesses, which is one of the ideas, we ask ourselves, are they now an advertising business? Okay? If they are running parking, or if they are getting involved in giving prizes to people who pay their motor vehicle license, are they now following the national lottery or something? And I think the answer is no. We are not customers of GPG. We are citizens, and they are our representatives who carry out public services. And so the national taxation is an excellent way to fund them. They're not meant to be a fully commercial entity.
All right.
Okay. And we shouldn't think of them that way. They are a public service, and the services they deliver are really their main focus.
Okay.
I'd say ahead of their ability to generate revenue.
Okay. Prof. Gerda?
I would agree with what Andre is saying, and then I would also, if you look at the budget and the spending in the budget, if 80% of the budget is going towards social services, it shows you that the emphasis within the province is its people. And those social services inherently do not make money. They cost money. But if those social services are run better, if they run more efficiently, if they use better systems, if they use maybe automated systems instead of labor-intensive systems, there are ways in which to leverage service against expenditure and then maybe not directly raise revenue, but at least address the inefficiencies that we find within a system that operates in silos and does not work in an integrated manner.
All right. We are going to continue having this conversation here at the University of Pretoria, but we will be bidding farewell to our live audience who has been tuned in on CNBC Africa. I do encourage you to continue following some of the comments and the insights that you may see popping up on social media, and I thank you for your time and being with us so far this morning. See you again very, very soon, and look forward to further engagement. And with that said, we are still continuing the conversation here, and at this point I would like to open up the questions and any comments that the audience members on the floor would like to make. Just as the gentleman and the lady in front have led us, kindly just raise your hand so we can see that you'd like to ask a question, and there should be a mic that is coming to you. And as you do get delivered the mic, could I ask that you just stand and introduce yourself before getting to the question or the comment that you would like to make briefly? Can we just get a mic to the gentleman here in front and the lady next to him?
Thank you very much. You can hear me, yes. Okay. Thank you. The last panelist, and I keep forgetting names. I remembered Andre and I remembered the gentleman next to him, but the gentleman next to the lady, he in actual fact talked about cutting red tape and the bylaws, and one of the things that he introduced was the idea of the solar panels. Now, one of the problems in local government is when people start opting for solar panels, one of our biggest sources of revenue is electricity. And if we don't get our energy revenue, we can't cross-subsidize some of our other services. So that starts creating problems for government, in that we've got to maintain our electricity infrastructure that's on the ground, and we've got to cross-subsidize other services. So does he have a solution as to how we actually deal with that? One of the solutions that we have is that we have partnered in Ekurhuleni. I'm Graham Gerspass, MMC for Finance and Economic Development in Ekurhuleni. One of our strategies is to go for IPP. So we signed up with 47 independent power producers on different platforms to actually generate power and supplement Eskom supply, so that we're not down as often. But another way that you can do it is a lot of shopping centres and that have opted for solar panels. And I know of one in Edenvale where in actual fact they can supply 60% of their own their own electricity consumption. If you get larger developments like that, they can possibly feed energy into the network, and the cities can buy from them and redistribute to their households, so that there is more power available that can be redistributed. So I'd like to hear your comments on that.
All right.
Thank you.
So his name is Isaiah, and before he does respond, apparently we're making really great television, because they've come back to us and we're live yet again. So I'd just like to welcome back the viewers at CNBC Africa who are joining us from Pretoria, the capital here of South Africa, in which we are engaging at the post-budget breakfast of the Gauteng province, the economic hub, and the plans that it has to increase its own revenue collection, to deliver on its own targets of improving service delivery within the province, and playing a bigger role in growing the economic pie. We were in a discussion about various innovative and creative things that the government could be doing to try and enhance own revenue collection. One of the comments that were made about perhaps moving beyond efficiencies is looking at the possibility of building new houses and ensuring that the new homes that are built have solar panels installed. But that apparently does pose a bit of a problem for a local government, given that energy is quite an important part of its income in order to deliver on its goals as a local government. And we do have the the senior executive economist of Alex Forbes, Isaiah Mhlanga, who will respond to that potential challenge as well as the solution that was provided by one of our audience members. Isaiah?
Thank you very much. I will not claim to have solutions that will solve the province's revenue issues, but I think they must be wrong if we use electricity as the main driver of revenue for the province. From a consumer perspective, are consumers paying for just electricity, or there are other margins that are added in order to drive revenue? Clearly, there must be something that is not well there. But I think it's a valid point that currently electricity provides quite a large proportion of revenue. But I think if we look at the social wage, 82% of the budget goes to the social wage, which means those are funds that could be used for other things if people were to be able to work and take care of themselves. For me, it's one of the biggest concerns if we see a country that has a significant proportion of its population dependent on the government. That is not a sign of success. Success is moving people from welfare to work. The province, therefore, has to make efforts to move those people out of welfare, which will then leave a lot of resources that could be used to invest in the province and grow the economy of the province. And if we are growing, potentially the dependence on electricity is going to decline as a revenue source, because you could be able to get revenues from other sectors of the economy, not just electricity. So the focus has to be more on growing the economy of the province than it is to try and maximize in a way that is not providing value to citizens. If we are making electricity too expensive, it's also a cost of doing business for small businesses that use electricity. Their input costs rise significantly, which means they become less competitive if we look at in relative terms to other countries that we compete with. Remember, companies compete with other companies in different countries. It's not countries that compete together, it's companies that compete in the same industry. Now, if our companies locally are paying extremely high levels extremely high rates of electricity, it means the input costs also increase. The products which they produce become too expensive, and as a result, they become less competitive. They can't compete in the global markets. So we should view it differently. The higher the electricity, the more uncompetitive our companies are, and the less they can compete globally. And as a result, we can't grow our province.
Right.
So that's one way of viewing it.
All right. I'm wondering if there's an opportunity for further engagement for you two after the session, perhaps over a coffee. Something tells me that score has not been settled. The lady next to you had her hand up, and she does have her mic, and then following which, could I just ask an assistant on the floor to bring the mic to the gentleman in the dapper blue suit.
Thank you so much, and good morning. My name is Adriana Randall. I'm also a member of MEC's Finance Committee in the Gauteng Provincial Government, as well as e-government. Now, one of our departments in the province that's really struggling major at the moment is health. We're on the verge of collapsing financially. Yes, brought about by COVID, or making it more serious, and MEC will approve or second me, but there's, in the media, there's rumors, or not rumors, but there's speculation that we need to take the bill for other countries' patients. You've seen the ladies in hospitals on the floors waiting to go into labor. What is your take, and not specifically to anybody, what is your take in terms of sending those bills to the embassies of the different African countries in terms of assisting this health department of ours that's really, we're in big trouble? The second one, and it might be a naughty one, the whole new cannabis industry, the regulation of the cannabis industry. What's your take on maybe possibly getting some revenue from that new stream? I'm curious because it was the second year that the Premier in his State of the Province address alluded to that. He's very serious about that industry. But we have not yet, we had discussions in the portfolio finance meetings with the MEC and the HOD and his staff, but how do we take it further in terms of cashing in on that possible revenue stream?
Right.
And then lastly, and one of the panel members alluded to, I think it is the professor there, in terms of synergy and not working in silos. Now, in e-government, and that's obviously focusing on the Gauteng broadband network, we've got a National State Security Agency, CETA. Now, we are compelled, it's compulsory for us to work through CETA in supply chain and getting our contracts to roll out Gauteng broadband network. And my problem is that we don't have control over their processes, and it's often costing us money and delaying our implementation. And that might just be a comment, but I think I loved what you said, Professor, because that's our struggle as well, in terms of we are strong enough. We've got the skills in this province. We're one of the richest economic hubs here. Why can't we do our own thing on the Gauteng broadband network? Why do we need to rely on another agency who cannot deliver? So thank you very much.
All right, all right. Thank you, ma'am. Would you, there was 3 questions there, and I think a relevant point. You can understand the, the want of, a better life, as it were, and South Africa does provide that for quite a number of people. On the rest of the continent, no disrespect to any of them, but as a result of the level of industrialization here. You can understand that. There's nothing wrong with that. There's skills that we're even short of that perhaps they even the other people from the rest of the continent supplement and supply. But then there is the issue of a overburdened health system, and to the point of how do we address that? I'm interested in your views. Do we send the bill over to the respective embassies?
It's a problem we can appreciate is part of a much bigger problem, right? It starts from border control and access. I think in most first world countries, you struggle to enter without proof of health insurance, for example, right? So you don't become a burden should you fall sick on another country, right? We don't see enough of that going on. Our systems are not formal enough, they're not enforced well enough yet. So quite frankly, that would be one of the simplest solutions, is to ensure whether you come in as a tourist or a worker, that if you don't have health insurance, that you should then pay the bill. I think we are unfortunately not just yet the richest country in the world that can afford to pay anyone's bills. So we need to do that. My mother-in-law just came in for a 3-month visit. She was forced to have health insurance, and she ended up in hospital for 6 days with pneumonia. The insurance could cover that bill. I think those type of things need to be properly enforced, but it starts right at the border. Right? And we know those are problems that goes beyond the provincial government competency. And many of the issues we've already mentioned is, provincial governments are kind of stuck in between. There's many national government competencies that needs to be enforced, lay the foundation. We've got the metros and the municipalities where most of these things actually happen on the ground. And provincial governments are kind of in between here. We saw just in the budget, right? Pretty much most of the budget is a transfer from national government. The own revenue strategy is essentially a drop in the bucket, as important as it is, and which this discussion is focusing on. We can't forget that there are limits to what a provincial government can do, right? And it comes back to, again, the point, systems thinking, synergies, etc., right? There needs to be better coordination then between the levels of government if we want to solve these problems. Politics sometimes gets in the way, and that's where leadership comes in, right? We need to see beyond that and do it for the better of the citizenship overall.
All right.
I can add a point of extending ourselves to the Gauteng government. I'm not an expert on health, but the company that I work for, Alex Forbes, we do have a health department, so I'd invite you to partner with us to try and solve some of your issues in health. I think we can add something into how you think about it.
All right.
May I also just...
Sure.
I think until a system like the health system is able to provide and provide evidence specifically of within itself working 100% efficiently and effectively, it cannot really start taxing those that come to it for help. It's the purpose of government to help, to service. So I think, as Heinrich also said, it is indicative of a bigger problem, and Isaiah also spoke about it, but if government, the different spheres of government, government isn't a hierarchy. Yes, a lot of the national revenue goes to the provinces and we're dependent on it, but that still does not make it a hierarchy.
Yeah.
And there is shared provincial national competence around which, you know, systems thinking integration could work a lot better. Integration is needed if these spheres of government are to work effectively together.
All right. Okay. Pushing on, Andre, something tells me you're itching there to address the potential high returns in the cannabis industry that the province can potentially partake of.
It's an excellent point, and it comes up a lot. There is a new industry. What can we do about this? Right. It's not just cannabis. There might be electric vehicles, batteries, solar panels, all those sorts of things. It might be small, but it's indicative of something. The most valuable thing about government spending is that it is counter-cyclical. Right.
Explain.
All other businesses are cyclical. So cannabis, the industry goes through this massive wave of spending, development. Suddenly prices drop for cannabis, which we've seen all over the world. And what does the cannabis industry do? They stop spending. Okay. If GPG is reliant on the cannabis industry for income, suddenly GPG becomes cyclical. And we don't want that. We definitely don't. We want government to be counter-cyclical. When we're spending less, they're spending more. That's good. That's not a bad sign. That makes South Africa strong. When we're all spending a lot, they can pull back a bit and they can get ready for the times that are tough. So if your revenue becomes very cyclical, probably your spending will become more cyclical. And that's a bit dangerous. Maybe you can say, okay, let's put it all into a box for a rainy day, but that's quite tough. So we must focus on that counter-cyclical government spending. They step in. They pay for things that no one else can pay for, and that's good.
Okay. All right, there was a question coming from Mr. Baloy.
Thank you very much, Program Director. My name is Cyril Baloy. I'm the HOD of Department of eGov. I think for me, I want to start from where Andre left off, actually. But coming back to what Isaiah is saying, in terms of, for example, now saying, we've got a Department of Health in Alexander Forbes, come and work with us.
Alex Forbes.
Yes. There's a bit of a challenge, and I think that's what we always raised in some of these discussions, because the red tape that is within the law or the current process becomes a hindrance in the process. I'll give you a simple example. We appreciate your offering. We go and start working with you. The current PPP process, public-private partnership process, doesn't give us enough room for us to just go and work with you and get the benefit that we need to get, without us being accused of corruption working with you. Because you are saying this now in public space. And in 3 months' time, Alexander Forbes is working with GPT to provide the service that you are providing. There's going to be a challenge there from your competitors. So, and I think the current leadership that we have in government is listening in terms of those issues. Because in the current sphere, if I have tea with you today, if we are seen somewhere at Mag and Bean having tea, and in 3 months' time you've got a project at Department of eGov, it's a problem. So we need to deal with the laws of this country. We understand the constitution is great and all that, but the laws of this country doesn't allow us to engage with business. We are seeing business as enemies instead of seeing business as partners. And that's why you find that we've got a challenge when it comes to the risk-taking and service providing. And everyone sees themselves as a service provider. We see ourselves as government. Instead of seeing each other as partners. You take 50% of the risk based on the service you're providing to me. I take 50% of the risk. Currently, the government takes 100% of the risk because you are looking at the bottom line only. You're not looking at what you have just said yourself to say, let's move people out of welfare to work. Because if we change those processes, then we'll be able to work better. Let me come back to, and it's a thought that I'm giving, especially when you want to go and sit with the MMC and discuss the issue of electricity later on. Because we need to understand that all 5 regions of the province are not socio-economic the same. And each and every one must be treated differently. When I deal with City of Johannesburg, the welfare of the citizen within the City of Johannesburg, in terms of the quantity or the number, it's much less if you can compare it with Ekurhuleni, in terms of informal settlements and all those. And that's where your point comes in. But because at the end of the day, those informal settlement people will not even be able to sustain paying electricity to City of Ekurhuleni. The same thing with China when we go to Winterfeld and all those kind of places.
All right. Mr. Below, could I just ask you that you make your second point quite brief? We've got 5 minutes left for this discussion, and there's a table at the back that also wishes to share some
Yes,
thoughts.
and I also wanted to respond to some of the issues that were raised, especially with automation of parking at hospitals and all that. We understand that for us to develop those systems, there will be a cost that gets involved. But we have partners with University of Johannesburg, VETS through Tumuloko, to assist us in developing most of the products that we want in the province. So we're not going to just go out into service provider requirements in terms of each and every tool that we want to build. We are building, and we also have an in-house development team that we are extending through UJ and all that. So I think I'll answer some of the questions later in a offline discussion in
yes,
terms
and
of
I think
time.
that also some of the
Thanks.
points you are welcome to make it in your closing remark, as I do believe you'll be wrapping up the session for us. So just in the interest of time, the last question going to the table over there. Ma'am, can I just ask that you just keep it as brief as possible?
I will be brief. I've been waving my hand. My name is Thandiwe Logwaila. I'm from Standard Bank in transactional banking. Firstly, I would like to appreciate the honor of having been granted the banking services with GPG, and looking forward to partnering with GPG. And our question really goes to the appetite of GPG in partnering with Standard Bank in these innovative solutions. Because as a bank, we've got a very aggressive innovation and digitization strategy, and that is also looking at decashing the economy. And we think that GPG should not be working on their own. They should be working with banks, and having been allocated and awarded the banking services, we are actually putting out ourselves as your partner in the innovative solutions that we potentially could partner and roll out to GPG. And I suppose my question is on the appetite of partnering with Standard Bank, not necessarily just delivering the traditional banking services that we've been awarded.
All right.
So I don't mean to hijack, but I'd like to add on to Thandiwe. Zen Dlamini, I actually look after, for my sins, the whole of public sector, including your ESCOMs, your SAAs and the land banks. And as I met, I mean, it's an honor to be in the same room with the Honorable MEC of Finance. And we had met with the HOD. We had expressed our commitment. You know, we understand the big task that is upon GPG, and we are cognizant of the work, I mean, particularly on the education side, the healthcare, and Nomsa took us through some of the programs that we're running in Limpopo, and then we said we can just triplicate all those programs in Gauteng because of the role of Gauteng in this country and in the continent as well. So I'd just like to say, please do take advantage of us. We are all there. We actually are ready. We want to start talking to those taverners in the townships and making sure that they get the right licensing, and then we actually, like Thandiwe says, we onboard them and then it goes online. There is just so much. We talk about the revenue, self-help mechanisms in light of the declining fiscal, and we're saying we are there to ensure that as you roll out, Honorable MEC, HOD, and the teams, we are there to make sure that we achieve your desired ambitions and the goals. I thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, with that said, closing the formal Q&A session from the floor, and I think, Mr. Baloy, I'm not too sure if you heard the passing comments, the last comments from the two ladies. Just they've invited you to partner with them a bit further. And I'm wondering if this is something that you can address in your closing remarks, just partnering with your bank beyond the transactional service, but just hearing a bit more about the innovative ideas that they're thinking to help amplify the strategy, if you could address that, sir. And on that note, we have formally come to the end of the broadcast here, coming to you from the University of Pretoria, in which we have heard the plans of the Gauteng government to increase the collection that it goes about getting itself amid challenges in which we know that the national share, or the share given by national government, is under pressure. Right now, trying to fund the economic recovery. The province is being creative. It has been innovative in its pursuit of enhancing that strategy. But according to some of the sentiments that have been shared so far, still quite areas of improvement that can be considered, such as integration of the key systems to enable the plan to be a lot more effective, the adequate skills and the leadership to drive the plan to its full potential, amongst some of the things that have been shared here to entice and increase the level of partnership in making the plan a reality. With that said, I'd like to close the broadcast, hopefully this time for the last time. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you again soon. Goodbye.